Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this is At the Helm Sports. I'm your host, Derek Helm. Thank you for joining me for episode 189. Please be sure to follow, subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave those 5-star reviews. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Down in the comments section, let me know, who do you have as your running back one this year? Because that's what we're going to be diving into. We've done the quarterbacks. We've done the tight ends. We've done the wide receivers. It's time to dive into the running backs because obviously this week a lot of people are going to be drafting. So we're going to go through my tiers among some other things. Making waves will make its return. But joining me, we have a new guest from the Mad Lab MMA, part of the NFL currency cartel, Mike Marangelli. How we doing, Mike?
What do you hear? What do you say, Derek? How you doing, my man?
Oh, living the dream. Just, excited for football season. I know we were talking before we hopped on. You have some drafts coming up this weekend. I'm sure a lot of people that are listening and watching do as well. So excited to break down these running backs today.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's one of my favorite weeks is this weekend coming up, heading into Labor Day weekend. It's fantastic. You got all the drafts. You got, final cuts. You're getting to start to look at DFS and things like that. So it's fantastic. I'm very, very excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we got week 0 of college football starting this weekend. So head over to themadlabmma.com. We all have our own channels over there, and I have placed my first NCAA bet of the year. But check out themadlabmma.com. Obviously, Mad Lab has everything on lock from combat sports, and we will have everything you need for DFS and NFL betting. That is free with your MMA subscription. So definitely check that out. Mike, you got anything cooking bet-wise in your channel yet, or are we getting a little closer to season?
Actually, I will probably start putting out some week 1 stuff on the NFL and some week 0 college football. I'm the light guy on college football. I might have 1 or 2 plays a week. I let the rest of you guys handle that. But for football, we'll drop into the prop bet city and we'll head into the game breakdowns and things like that. So I'll be lighting up that channel, like you said, with madlabmma.com in the Discord and on the website. We give you plays, we give you DFS breakdowns and advice. We're in there 24/7. It feels like. So if you haven't signed up, definitely sign up for the site.
Yeah, and I mean, you killed it last year. I think you definitely had the best of us last year from a betting standpoint on the NFL, and people know how difficult it is to bet NFL. So congratulations on that.
Thanks. Yeah, it's one of those things where you follow your reads, you follow the plays, and like I said, we've got the best team around. You and John and Dan and Mike, Mad Lab himself. Yeah, like I said, we've got the best team around.
Yeah, it's always a fun time in there too. So that's probably one of the best parts is the jokes. So come and check us out. But we are here to run through the running back tiers and kind of go through my rankings here. So we might as well get into it because we have a lot to get through. And we will start with, the first tier here. And at running back 1, I have Jakrowski. No, I don't have him. No, I don't. You guys are fucking nuts. What are you doing? Why are you letting Bill Krosky spike your drinks? Stop taking him this early. What are you doing? I get it. He has a role on the team. It's fun. It's a great story. But Chris Rodriguez still exists. Eckler still exists. Brian Robinson is still on the team as of saying this. At best, he's having a Pacheco rookie year. You're getting a little too crazy. Calm it down a little. I wanted to open with that because you guys are out of control every time I get on Twitter. That's all I see. I think the kid could be good. He's going to have a role on the offense, but stop taking him in the 6th round. You psychos. Mike, what are your thoughts on this guy?
This is a training camp hype, right? I mean, we have it every year. There's a guy who we look at, and I think with the Brian Robinson news coming out, the Jackson Krosky Merritt thing is, again, he's a talented kid. And in that backfield, he has a chance to make an impact. But to your point, he's not a 6th round valuation. It's a crowded backfield. We don't really know what's happening with Robinson. We don't know what role Eckler will have. Chris Rodriguez is still there. to your point, Jaden Daniels is still right. He is going to have an impact in the running game. And so I just feel like heading into the season, let's to your point, take a deep breath, let it be someone else's problem. Don't do it. Don't do it. Because if you do it, you are going to end up in misery. Every week you're going to have to figure out, is this the week he will have the bigger role? What's going to happen? It's a recipe for disaster. I think there are better values at where he's going now, because when he was going in the last round, I'm like, well, sure, you throw a dart. If it doesn't work out, you drop him, right? Now you're spending a valuable pick on him. And so I'm off. I'm not going to have him on my team. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, it's definitely the opportunity cost. Now, I mean, a lot of people that might be drafting this weekend, maybe they're in a home league with a bunch of friends. We obviously live in a bubble doing best ball drafts and on Twitter all the time. So there's a lot of people in your league that might even still not know who this guy is. If that's the case, fine. Take him in the 11th round. Take him with 1 year picks. Then you're actually getting a value there. But the people that are just going nuts and taking him way too high, let's pump the brakes a little bit here. But let's get into the real tiers here, because that's what we're here to do. So, tier 1, I have Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, and Christian McCaffrey. Now, this is kind of scary. Where I came up with these tiers is just based on workload and where I really think these guys could finish. These guys, it's not so much who I would necessarily take, because I don't know if I'm taking Saquon or McCaffrey this year. It's a little worrisome for me, but I think that you would be crazy to say that if Barkley and McCaffrey are healthy all season, that they don't finish in the top 5 at least, or have a very good chance at number 1 overall. McCaffrey, in any season where he's played a full season, has basically never finished worse than the running back 2. So I do think they deserve to be in this tier. It's just a matter of your risk tolerance of whether you're willing to take them. I'm probably not, but I mean, you take it and you're right, and they're healthy, you could very easily win your league. Bijan here, I think, is definitely the safest, and I still think he has the upside. The workload is elite, 304 carries. He had 61 receptions, over 350 touches for your RB1 is definitely pretty helpful. 1,400 yards, 14 touchdowns, added another 431 receiving. He was up there for running backs as far as targets go, receptions. So I do think that he deserves to be up here. But Mike, what are you thinking about this tier here?
Overall, I mean, I have no strong objections to any of these 3 guys in the tier. Clearly, if McCaffrey's healthy, he is elite, top level elite. I mean, the points that you are going to get from Christian McCaffrey, as long as he is healthy, he can be the number 1 player in fantasy without question. Bijan is the safest. Saquon I'd put as the second, kind of the middleman there, and then I would rank McCaffrey 3rd on this list. The only guy that you might have a conversation about, I'm sure we'll get to him, is a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, because I think he is going to have a significant role in that offense still. But of these three guys, first round running back grades without question. It's just a matter of how you want to build your team. If you are not risk averse, if you're okay with taking someone who may not play 17 games, McCaffrey is just he could be a slate breaker. I was taking a look at his stats, and you're talking about a guy who in 2022, 21 points, fantasy points a game in a half-point PPR setting, 24 and a half in 23, in 23. Last year, obviously, he missed a bunch of time, only played in 4 games, still 11.9. But, you're looking at in 2020, he scored 30 points a game. He averaged 30 fantasy points a game. I mean, that's just elite level scoring. And obviously in fantasy, the name of the game is draft the team that scores the most points, right? I mean, if you do that, you're going to win more often than not. So yeah, I'm perfectly comfortable with these 3 as kind of your top tier, top of the line guys.
Yeah. McCaffrey, when he's good, I mean, he has the safest floor and the highest ceiling. So if you want to take him, Go ahead. I mean, I think there's probably too many people that have been burned by him, and it is. I'd say it's riskier than Saquon because of the injuries over the past couple of years. But Saquon's had his injuries as well, so it's really just a matter of risk tolerance. And you know what? Before we get into tier two, we might as well just hop into the segment making waves. Every year we have Wave come on and give out his picks, so we might as well do it here. So, Wave, why don't you let us know what you're thinking for 2025 at the running back position here?
RBs. So we got my guy. Last year, I think I gave you Gibbs. I'm going with Gibbs again. I think last year he finished as RB1, I believe. Actually, I know he was boosted when Montgomery got hurt. I know during those weeks Montgomery was there. He averaged 31 fantasy points a game. I know Monty's going to be back, but I just think with the new offensive coordinator Johnny Morton, he talked up Gibbs a lot. I think Gibbs gets a lot more work at the expense of Montgomery, and I think it'll be malpractice if he doesn't. Yeah, he still possesses. He's explosive. Possesses a sub 4.4 speed. He can catch. Coach is talking him up about getting more routes for him. It's in a great offense. I love Gibbs again. Think he can challenge number one again.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's questions about that offense, and it's probably depends on how much they use Montgomery. But if they're in negative game scripts a lot more than they were last year, and I mean, they could definitely use him a lot more. I don't think he was the one last year. That had to be Barkley, right? But he was definitely top. He was definitely top three, though.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think he was two. My bad.
All right, who else we got?
O'Marion Hampton, first round pick, 6', 220, 4.46 speed. Goes to Coach Harbaugh. He loves to run the ball. He's in a great offense. Najee Harris had a little 4th of July accident and is a bum, so not worried about him. I think that Hampton could be top back right now and just never relinquish a job. He can catch passes as well, and you can get him at the end of the third and the early fourth.
Yeah, don't hate that one either.
And then next we got Travion Henderson, 5'10", 202. I think that's big enough. Second round pick. He's been destroying camp. Going to catch a ton of balls. He might get deep routes. I'm reading, and they have a lack of pass catching options in front of him, so they're definitely trying to get him the ball. I think sooner than later he takes over the RB job and becomes the top dog. And he also has 4.43 speed, and with an ascending Drake May and a lack of weapons, I think the sky's the limit, and you can get him in the middle of the 6th round.
Nice. And who are we fading this year at the running back position?
Fading, James Conner. He's old. He's slow. I just think the age clip's finally calling him. Father time's undefeated, and honestly, I don't even know how he produced last year, to tell you the truth. But I just don't see it continuing.
Yeah, he's definitely got a solid workload there, but the issue is obviously can he hold up health-wise? Because throughout his career, that has been a problem. So I definitely think that could be an issue, and I guess we'll see what happens. But Wave,
my bad. I also like Trey Benson. I think Trey Benson could steal some of that work too.
Yeah, definitely should eat in a little bit, and I mean, if you're the Cardinals, it would probably actually make a little bit more sense to do that, to try and keep Connor a little bit more healthy. So maybe that eats into his workload a little bit. And you know, whether it's health-wise or just lack of the workload, he could potentially fail at where he's going right now. But yeah, as always, Wave, definitely love you coming on, giving the takes, usually some hot takes. Last year, there was some ups, some downs. You know, I think you gave out Brian Thomas, so that was obviously a good one last year, and there was some lowlights with Zamir White also. But
Zamir White, my guy, man, Don coaching.
Sure it is, but yeah, I mean, we'll see how these guys pan out, and always a pleasure, Wave.
All right, bro, take it easy.
All right, so making waves. What'd you think of the takes there, Mike?
I mean, they were solid takes. I like the Jahmyr Gibbs. Obviously, he's 21.3 in fantasy points a game last year, 5.6 yards per attempt. I mean, he's an elite talent. I do believe that they will be in some, you made an excellent point. They're going to be in, I think, a few more negative game scripts this year. I believe that they might be in some shootouts. I think the defense has a couple of question marks. I know they're still good, but again, you got new coordinators on both sides of the ball. So I like the Gibbs, and the Travion Henderson is an interesting one because New England is a team. I'm still trying to figure out what the weapons are there, right? They had Diggs, they've got Williams, they've got Booty, but what does it look like, right? None of those guys are popping off the page as like, oh, that's a Bono. I mean, Diggs could be, but he's getting older. You got some question marks there with the age, with quite frankly the will to still want to play the game. So there's a couple of things there that I kind of looked at and went, the Henderson. I mean, elite yards per attempts last year at college. 7.1. I know it's the college game, but still, you're looking at that going. The kid can run. He 11 total touchdowns. He can catch the ball a little bit. Had 27 receptions last year in college. I like the Henderson. I like those two. I'm not as low on James Conner as Wave is. I know again, I've been saying this about Derrick Henry all season. You've heard me say it. Connor's kind of the same way. I jumped off the Connor train 3 years ago, and for 3 years now, he's been making me look ridiculous because he's producing and producing and producing, right? And I think in fantasy football, the one thing that most people don't understand is opportunity is really the biggest caveat to success. And the guy's going to run the ball. He's the clear lead back. Yes, I do believe they may involve Benson a little bit more, but he's still the lead back in what could be a pretty good offense. If they get it right, Kyler's healthy all year. You've got Harrison on the outside. McBride, so you've got some elite passing. I think that'll open up some running lanes. So I don't necessarily know that I'm not off on Connor. There are a couple other guys on the list that I'm looking at saying I'm definitely off on. I can look at a couple guys right now and say I'd be off on those guys, but Connor's not one of them this year. And where he's going right now, I just think it's still a value. So
yeah, I agree with the Connor take. The only concern is injury, but that's kind of baked into his current price. And I mean, I think that defense could be a little bit better than they were last year. And I mean, Connor's going to get plenty of red zone work. He's going to get plenty of work. Trey Benson will probably eat in a little bit more than he did last year, but that actually might be a benefit to Connor because you take a little bit of the workload off and maybe he's a little bit fresher and maybe he's less likely to get injured. So I agree completely. I think fading Connor is probably not the greatest idea, and we'll get to it. I actually think I have him a little bit higher than most people. And then obviously, we don't have the regular crew here, and I know that they would be upset if we just let Wave slide here, but you gave out Gibbs last year. He finished as he said the RB1, but I think maybe in PPR he was up there. But you go right back to him. I mean, that's kind of a cop out, Wave, a little bit. I mean, yeah, I like him too, but who doesn't?
Gibbs isn't a hard thing. Right. Yeah. Gibbs that's not a deep find, right? I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs as being a stud. That's not breaking news, right?
And then Travion Henderson, I like, but it's just another guy. He's getting way too much hype. He's moving way up draft boards, and I like him, but I think that he's going to be very boom bust, especially as a rookie. We know that Josh McDaniels likes to run multiple running backs. Stevenson, I don't think is going away. Obviously, has a fumbling problem and is currently a little banged up, but I do think he's still going to be a part of this offense. I think he'll likely be the goal line back. And Henderson has home run hitting ability. So, I mean, you're probably going to get weeks where he scores a 60-yard touchdown and it's incredible, but then you might get weeks where he gives you 9 points. So if I am drafting him, I'm not reaching for him. I'd rather get him a little bit later on. I'd probably rather have a well-established team and get him as a second running back or a flex. If I have two stud wide receivers and a stud running back, maybe get him as my RB2. Or if I already have two stud running backs, get him as a flex. I'd probably rather that a little bit more. And then Omari and Hampton, we still have to see it. Obviously, run heavy offense. We expect it to be a pretty good offense, but losing your left tackle is definitely not helpful. So we got to see it. Obviously, he's going to be given the chance right out of the gates with Najee not there, but it could be a good call, and I guess we'll have to see on that one.
Yeah, with the Hampton thing again, I like the talent there. I like where he landed. It's a great landing spot for his talent, for his skill set. The one thing about Harbaugh last year, though, is, and I know that you could say, well, he didn't have this level of talent with Omari and Hampton, but he mixed it up. He had Gus Edwards, he had Dobbins, he brought it. I mean, I know they had some injuries, so they brought in, they had Hassan Haskins, and then they had Kamani Vidal. So he had a lot of running backs, and the question I have is that because he didn't trust one, he didn't have that workhorse, or is it because he just truly, that's just what Harbaugh's offense with Greg Roman's going to be? And so I don't know. And for me right now, out of all the rookies, the Hampton hype train to me has gotten a little out of control, because really right now you're having to draft him in the third round. It's third and fourth round, and I'm just not. I just can't get behind it. I understand the Ashton Genty thing. Travion right now, he is going in a place where you said it best. Based on my build, he's usually like my flex. He's my running back 3, and I'm okay with that. I can live with that guy, and then I can supplement that. And to your point, maybe I play a matchup. Maybe I play him as he's not built in as somebody I have to start, and Hampton is. And I'm just not that comfortable with that. I still have a few question marks on that one, because when Najee comes back, assuming he truly isn't, totally blind. I mean, he's gonna be back at some point in time, and he's gonna have some type of role. And he is just a guy. He is not very good, but I worry about the goal line touches there.
Yeah, and I would actually expect, if for some reason Najee can't come back, I expect them to add a veteran presence. I mean, Gus Edwards is still actually out there. Obviously,
Right.
You could slot him right in, and you're not afraid of him from a fantasy standpoint, but I could see him getting enough to work into Hampton's role a little bit. But if we go to the next tier, as I said, these tiers are kind of a mix of where I think guys could finish, not necessarily where I'm going to take them. But I mean, these next two guys, I think, have just as good a chance as any to finish in the top 5. And it's part of the reason why I kind of differentiated them into a tier of their own rather than the rest of the guys, is because I think they have a better chance than the guys a little bit further back to finish in that top 5 or potentially even 1 overall. So for this one, we have tier 2, Jahmyr Gibbs, Derrick Henry. Now, obviously, we just talked about Gibbs. Reason I don't have him in tier 1 is just the fact that Montgomery is still there. Montgomery is a red zone presence. I mean, if the defense does play a little bit better and they're maybe playing from ahead and they have to run the ball a little more, that kind of hurts Gibbs. So that's one of the main reasons that I'm a little bit concerned. I could see this offense taking a step back. They lost their center, that maybe the offensive line isn't as good. So just those little knocks on Gibbs are enough to push him back a little bit to not be in that top tier for me. But as I said, if he finished number 1 overall, I wouldn't exactly be surprised. And then I have Derrick Henry here. You touched on it a little bit. We keep waiting for the wheels to fall off here, but those wheels are made of adamantium. This guy is not fucking human. He is just, it's hard to see him not scoring 15 touchdowns in this offense. Led the league with 19 carries and 12 touchdowns inside the 5-yard line. I don't see that going away. Led the league with 1,121 yards after contact. That is ridiculous. He had over 1,000 yards after guys hit him. The guy is just a freak of nature, and I just, in a half-point PPR setting, I could still see him easily finishing top 3. So what are you thinking here, Mike?
As far as the Henry, I mean, we've already talked about Gibbs. For me personally, in my tiers, I have him. I have Gibbs in that top tier. But with Henry, there's just, to me, there is no path that the guy doesn't break 1,000 yards, as long, barring any injuries. Taking injuries out of it, there's no path he doesn't break 1,000 yards, and he could very easily score 18 to 20 touchdowns in this offense. He had 18 last year, 16 rushing, 2 receiving. He could very easily do that again. If not, again, I could see him getting a 20. This offense runs through him and Lamar. He is just elite. And at all things, yards after contact, yards per attempt, and he's catching the ball. I mean, he's the last 3 seasons he's had 33, 29, and 19. I mean, so he's getting some catches, right? He's not the guy that he was early in his career where he's getting 6, 7, 8, 9. He's getting double digits. He is. You're looking at a guy who's just, everything sets up for him that even if the yardage comes down a little bit, even if he doesn't get 1,900 yards this year, I could say, yeah, but he might get 2 or 3 extra touchdowns, which is worth, another 200 or 300 yards that he might lose. So it's just, I agree with you. To me, he is just, he's a notch below the top 3 or 4 guys there that I have. But I mean, him and Gibbs, would it surprise me if they ended up as running back 1 at the end of the year? No, not at all. I'm with you 100% on that.
Yeah, and one of my favorite bets to put in is when the Ravens are going to be in a game where it's going to be probably a shootout. Usually it's Derrick Henry over half a reception. And I utilized that several times last year, so probably be going back to that market.
Absolutely.
All right, next tier 3. So this one I've got a bunch of guys here. Now, I think their range of outcomes could be rather wide, where maybe they're not necessarily coming in the top 10. Maybe they're just outside of it. But I think these are the guys that I'd be willing to take towards the end of the first round and anywhere through the second round for the most part. So I think there's some issues of them potentially finishing in the top 3 overall. So that's kind of why I have him here. Ashton Genty. Just, we know the profile coming out of college. Just, again, with Omarion Hampton, haven't seen it yet. I'm probably not willing to take him in the first round. I just think, again, opportunity cost. It's kind of scary to take a guy this high that we've never even seen, that might not be on the best offense. So maybe that caps his touchdown upside a little bit. And I am growing on Chase Brown here a little bit. I will say, after that preseason game, might have to move him down a little bit just with offensive line concerns. But I think he is going to be the guy. Was absolutely phenomenal last year. I don't really see much in the way of anybody getting into his workload. Had only 990 yards and 7 touchdowns, but that was in only 10 games started last year. So 10 games as a starter, still basically had 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. And that's not even really his total bread and butter. He had 54 receptions, 65 targets, which was 6th among running backs, and added another 4 touchdowns through the air. So I love Chase Brown. I think he's on an elite offense and has no competition really for his workload. Josh Jacobs, I think, deserves to be up here. Led the league with 40 attempts inside the 10. League high 14 inside the 10-yard, or 14 touchdowns inside the 10-yard line. So he's getting the ball when they get in close. He's scoring touchdowns. 3rd most yards after contact. I think Jacobs has continually just been slept on through his Raiders career and now in Green Bay. Even if they do throw the ball more, I still could see him finishing up here. Bucky Irving is a guy that I go back and forth on. Definitely was good last year, 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns. I have him up here kind of talent alone. Just, it worries me a little bit because a lot of his production too was at the end of the season. I mean, 2 games against Carolina, 1 against New Orleans. Carolina literally was the worst historical defense ever last year. So that scares me a little bit there. But I do think on talent alone and opportunity, he deserves to be up here. Then I have Jonathan Taylor. Same thing. I just think the talent, it's hard to get away from him. I do think that Daniel Jones is helpful to this offense, which is actually ridiculous to say. But The big issue with Jonathan Taylor, why I wouldn't put him higher, is last 3 years, only 14 games played, 10 games, 11 games. So it's definitely a concern there. And then last, I have Kyron Williams here. Stafford seems to be back at practice. We'll have to see how the back is doing. But, I mean, this is a guy that led the league with 65 red zone rushes last year, 14 touchdowns in the red zone. He's a touchdown monster. If for some reason Stafford isn't there, I think it does cap his upside, but it might make them utilize him even more. So these are the guys I got in this range. What are you thinking here, Mike?
Solid group of guys here. My two favorites out of this group are Josh Jacobs. I absolutely love him this year. I think the Packers offense will be multifaceted this year. I think assuming that the Love thumb injury is as minimal as they've made it out to be, I think this offense has a lot of different weapons. They can attack you a lot of different ways. But the bell cow to this team is Josh Jacobs. And after watching them this past weekend, I was at the Packers-Colts games. I will tell you this. The backup running backs on this team are not good. Marshawn Lloyd is not – he is just a guy. And that's if he can stay healthy. Emmanuel Wilson's fine, but again, not a threat there. So Josh Jacobs is going to run the ball. He is going to get 85 to 90% of the rushing attack on this offense. And you hit it right on the head. Inside the 5, they run the football. So I love him. You know, I think he's a great running back one to start your team off with, because just the consistency's there. And then the other guy, you know, that you touched on that I really like is I actually really like Kyron Williams. I like him this year. I'm not too worried about that Stafford injury. Yeah, the offense and the concern on the quarterback play is there, but I do think they would utilize him in the running game. I mean, I think he's just going to get more touches. I think he's going to get the ball more, and I'm not concerned that, you know, that they're and honestly, he might get more looks in the passing game as well, with Jimmy G backing him up, or Stetson Bennett, whoever they decide to go with as the backup there. But I believe that overall he might benefit from an injury to Stafford. So those are the two guys that I like the best in that tier. I like Chase Brown a lot, and I would have elevated him to the top of this tier. But the problem I have is that offensive line did not look good at all. And I mean, I know it's just the preseason, and I'm trying not to overhype myself, or not to worry myself to getting ulcers on some guys that I've got on dynasty teams and keeper leagues. But he's one of them, and he's one of those guys who I looked at and thought, oh my goodness, this line didn't improve one iota, and it certainly didn't look it looked like it got worse. I mean, they were letting Joe Burrow run for his life back there. So I have some concerns there. The Taylor concern, the injury is always there, but I actually do like the fact that Daniel Jones is the starter now. He can move the ball. He's going to get the ball down the field. He's going to be able, I think, to lift the top off of this defenses a little more, to give Taylor some more running room. I believe that he can operate Shane Steichen's offense in a middle of the road quarterback ranking type level. I think, he's not a top 10 quarterback. We're never going to confuse Daniel Jones with that. But could he be the 18th best quarterback in the league and them have a middle of the road offense? Absolutely. And I think Jonathan Taylor, that's all you need for him to be elite. The health concerns are always going to be there with him. And then, Genti, I mean, historically good in college. I was looking. I wrote down 2,600 rushing yards last year. He had 18 total touchdowns, or 30 total touchdowns last year. Just elite talent. The question is whether or not this Raiders offense is going to be able to help him.
Yeah, I think that's the concern for taking him as high as he is the touchdown upside. Just with an offense that's probably not going to score tons of touchdowns, I think it definitely caps him. And I like what you said with Kyron. I do think that Jimmy G, if he did have to start, it caps Puka and Devontae more than it caps Kyron. So I like that. And then, Daniel Jones playing quarterback is better than Richardson, because Richardson, when they got inside the 10-yard line, would look to run those touchdowns. Those are most likely going to go to Jonathan Taylor now. So
that's exactly right.
if we go to tier 3, which we were just in, we could go to tier 5 instead. We can go to tier 7. If I could get my ones right. So let's go to tier 4. Now this is a small tier for me. I have Achane in this tier. Just obviously with a calf injury, it concerns you. He's had injury concerns. So you could say that he deserves talent-wise to be up a little bit higher, but with the injury concerns, I have to put him down here. But with that being said, I do think that this defense is going to be absolutely terrible. I think this offensive line is not great either. So you would say maybe that hurts him from a running back standpoint. But the fact that he is used so much in the passing game, I think it actually helps him quite a bit. I mean, last year it was ridiculous. He had 87 targets, 78 receptions, just under 600 yards receiving. I mean, the guy was basically playing wide receiver. He has the speed to basically break anything for a touchdown. So I do think that with the upside, he deserves to be here. We already touched on Omarion Hampton. We touched on some of the concerns there with him. So that's kind of why I have him here, and I wouldn't put him up any higher. But I do think the workload is going to be good in a good offense. And as of right now, doesn't have much competition for touches. I moved James Cook up here. All offseason, I was lower on him. I do think that there's going to be some significant touchdown regression from him. Obviously, last year coming in, that was one of the big concerns, is can he score touchdowns? But he definitely showed last year that he could. I don't see anywhere near 16 touchdowns this year, but he does have big playability, does have some receiving ability. So I think he's definitely worthy of being here. And the fact that they paid him all that money, obviously it shows that they have faith in him to basically run their offense through him when it's not Josh Allen. So I do think that it actually is pretty telling. And then also, again, preseason, we can't take much away, but one of the big things is playing time in the preseason. And Ray Davis was basically playing with the third team into the second half. So definitely got to keep that in mind. I do think that Cook is going to be the clear-cut number 1 here. But Mike, what are you thinking here?
In this tier for me, it's Devon Achane. I like him. I know the soft tissue injury is a concern. I agree with you. It's a minor yellow flag for me right now. They've said that could be he's going to be ready for week 1. I'm hopeful that that's the case, because if he is, I believe that he has elite potential skill set. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's got that top end speed to get away from the defense, and he's strong enough to run between the tackles effectively. So for me, Achane is kind of the guy in this tier that I would covet the most. I like James Cook. I really do. The problem I have with Cook is he is a man amongst a lot of men in that offense with Buffalo. Yes, I agree that Ray Davis running with the thirds is a positive there, but you still have Josh Allen in the backfield who's going to, vulture some touchdowns. You've got a lot of mouths to feed in the passing game. None of them are elite though, and that's the bonus for Cook. So, I mean, I would have no problem taking Cook. I like both of those two over Omarion Hampton. I'm a little lower on him than as we talked about. So, you look at Cook. I mean, he's averaging. He averaged 16.7 fantasy points. A game last year. He had 38 or 32 receptions. 18 total touchdowns, as you touched on. So, I like those two guys to me. If there was, of what I call the best of the rest, once you get past the top 6 for me, the best of the rest, who can jump into the tier, into that top tier or the top 6, Achane and Cook are the two that I kind of key on the most. And where you can get them, I just like them as you know, when I go running back or wide receiver, if you're looking in a tier, this is the tier I kind of key on to try to get one of them to be my running back one. So I like these guys. I like those two. I would, I'm a little lower on Hampton than those two guys. I would put those guys as almost a class above the rest, above those the three here. So
Yeah, and I mean, wildly different ADPs at the moment. Obviously, Achan is still going up there towards the second round. I would expect him to drop more, especially if this calf injury lingers a little bit more. You can get Cook fourth round, even fifth round. I mean, that's pretty nice there. And then Hampton, as we said before, probably going somewhere around the third or fourth. So I do think that Achan slips a little bit with the injury history and the fact that he is dealing with the calf. And if that's the case, I mean, you might be able to capitalize him closer to where Hampton's going by the time you're doing your draft.
Well, and you're exactly right, because I just saw it last night again, it's best ball. And you and I, as we talked about, we've kind of maxed out on best ball because it's like, it's like everybody, it feels like everyone jumped on board this week. I mean, drafts are filling up in 10 seconds flat, but I noticed it last night in some best ball drafts. Achan slipped, he was going top of the second round, earlier in the summer. And last night he fell to the last pick in the second round in one draft, and actually into the third round in another draft. So you're starting to see it. People are cooling off on him, and all of a sudden now you're starting. I think we're going to be able to get him where I think he should have probably been all along. I thought he was a little too high just because of what happened last year in Miami. It was an unmitigated disaster. And so quarterbacks were just throwing to him because they didn't have time and there was no skill there. And so they were just dumping him off to him. And that's how he got as many receptions as he did. But I think now, when you start talking about Achan in the end of the second, top of the third, well, that starts to get appealing for me, right? That's where I started going, I like him because I can build my team. And I'm comfortable with a guy like him as my running back one in that range because what I've gotten ahead now, so absolutely. You're right.
Yeah. And the other thing is too, if people are apprehensive in best ball, that his game even suits that a little bit more, where you're willing to embrace a little more volatility. You're looking for the upside that he presents you, being able to score the long touchdowns. So in your home leagues and in some regular drafts where, especially in those first couple rounds, you want a little bit of safety baked in there, he could fall even further in those formats. So if we go to tier 75 now, because I keep messing up the numbers, but tier 5, James Conner I have here. I have Breece Hall here, Alvin Kamara, Chuba Hubbard, Ken Walker. Now, we discussed Conner. I think he absolutely has upside, has a safe floor. It's just the injury concerns here. Breece is easily one of the most difficult for me to rank at this point because, we did our AFC East preview earlier in the year, and I was high on him because I said, they are going to have to rely on him. They don't have weapons, but it seems like they love Braylon Allen, that they're going to use him. He's not going away. Isaiah Davis is going to mix in and passing downs. You have Fields. That's a concern around the red zone. So I do think that you have to bump Breece Hall down a little bit, but I do think that he still does possess some upside. I mean, we've seen him finish as a top 3 running back. So I think you have to have him here. I do think, as the year goes on, they are going to have to rely on him, especially when this offense goes off the rails and they can't get anything done. They're going to have to get the ball to their playmakers. So I don't love him early, but he's falling further and further and further in drafts here. And similar to the case that I made with Travion, I mean, this could be a guy where if you get him late and he's your third running back, or a potential flex play, it could be huge. You draft Kamara and nobody's going to be like, oh, awesome pick. I wanted him. But, I mean, even in a terrible offense, right? The Saints are going to be terrible. So they're going to have to throw the ball. He's the only running back with at least 50 receptions in each of the last 3 seasons. He's the only running back with at least 40 receptions over the last 8 seasons. The guy is going to be on the field. He's going to be used a lot. They're going to throw the ball to him. Chuba Hubbard on workload alone, I think, deserves to be here. I do think that this offense takes a step forward. Obviously, we saw what he could do last year, being the one here in this offense. So I think that he deserves to be here. And then Ken Walker, I think the upside is tremendous. He's supposedly back at practice, but obviously a huge injury concern here. And they're talking about mixing in Zach Charbonnet, but I think on upside alone and in a Kubiak offense, a run-first offense, I think Ken Walker deserves to be here. But Mike, what are you thinking here?
Yeah, so this tier is a tier that, if I'm speaking frankly, Chuba is the guy that jumps off the page, and then Connor is right below him. And then the other guys give me a little bit of agita. They are Kamara is one that I just cannot wrap my head around. I mean, I believe we might be looking at a historically bad offense in New Orleans this year. I really do. And that concerns me. Normally, I think, well, that's going to give us opportunity. I'm very concerned about Kamara. I really am. Age 30 season. So I'm a little concerned about him. And Breeze, I want to love him. The talent, the skill set is there. He is a great between the tackles runner, and yet he is explosive enough to get to the outside. He can catch the ball a little bit. Those two, but I just don't know what this offense is going to look like. I don't know where they're going to end up, with Braylon Allen, and Isaiah Davis. And then you've got Justin Fields back there who's going to take some rushes away, and then, I don't know. I have so many question marks that where their ADP is currently, I'm off of both of those guys. But Chuba and Connor, I really like. And then Kenneth Walker, really, for me, the biggest concern is just he can't seem to stay on the field. Misses time. He's going to, if you get 15 games, I'd be thrilled. But he's played 15 games in 22 and 23. He only played 11 last year. So he's consistently going to miss at least 2 games. Last year was a little more than that. And so I'm just concerned about what you're going to get there, whether Charbonnet does eat into that. If he does, stay off the field for 3 or 4 games at a time. What are we going to see there? Does Charbonnet, do they go with the hot hand this year and just say, you know what, we're going to go with Zach? It's just a concern. Those 3 guys are concerns. But Chuba, I love. I really do like Chuba Hubbard. I think this Carolina offense, they might be onto something. They might, if Bryce Young continues to perform like he did towards the end of last season, if they can they've turned the corner there with him. They've brought in McMillan, to be the lead, the alpha receiver there. I think Chuba's he can catch the ball out of the backfield. He had 43 receptions last year, so he's a nice checkoff safety valve for Bryce. He's strong between the tackles, rushing, 4.8 yards to carry. So I really, really like what they're doing, and I like his role. I don't see someone behind him who's going to push him for any which way. I think he's
the only issue with that is Dowdle supposedly is going to be playing a little bit more on passing downs. So I think that's why I have Chuba here, because the workload is going to be solid. But if he is losing a little bit of that passing work, that just concerns me a little bit about the upside.
I understand that. I'm just not a Rico Dowdle guy. I don't believe in his talent.
Oh yeah, no, not at all.
So I believe that they're gonna, especially if they see that, again, early in the season, I'm not a huge I don't concern myself with a guy who has absolutely no talent. And so I look at it and go, I'm not worried about it. Eventually talent wins out, right? You may lose it for a week, but when he struggles to get, 3 yards of reception, and it's just, I'm not concerned about it. So for me, I understand I understand though why you wouldn't have put him, in tier above him. Let's say I don't know that he belongs in that tier. I think this is a proper tier for him, with this group of guys from an ADP perspective and stuff like that. And then we talked about Connor, but I really like him.
Oh yeah,
I like him this year. I'm done talking about guys who have consistently performed that we go, oh, they're going to hit the wall. You know what? If they hit the wall and I'm there, I guess I'm there. But I can't worry about a wall and, at 30 years old, because, nutritionists and all the things these guys are doing are leading to them being effective a little later in their careers now. He is a guy who I'm not saying he's going to play 17 games. We know James Conner is going to miss a couple games this year. We just know that, right? And you have to draft accordingly because of that. But because of where you can get him, it's just a no-brainer. His stats will provide you the upside that you need. And so I like Connor. I really do. Now, the one thing about Hall, and we mentioned, I will say this. I was just taking a look at some stats as you were talking. And right now again, early, the majority of the heavy hitting drafts won't happen until this weekend and beyond. But his ADP on ESPN is 57.2, which at the 57th pick.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He was going in the second round to start best ball drafts when we did that AFC preview. So I liked him early, and then I was just like, as it went on, I just started cooling on him, but everybody else has too. So now he might even be a value at this point.
Yeah, again, if you're looking at him and going, well, I can get him between 50 and 60. Yeah, I'm perfectly happy settling in on that, because I think he'll pay off, in spades as that type of pick, right? Where you've built up 4 or 5 guys, 4 guys, 5 guys ahead of them. Yeah, I'll take them. I'll be all right with that. So that's the one thing with Hall is that based on where you can, again, let the draft come to you with these tiers and be flexible. But this is, I found that interesting. 57.2 on the ESPN drafts right now.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is with this tier, that's kind of why I have these guys lumped in here. Their profiles are completely different. But as you're making your draft, we kind of went through the studs, and this is where you can make a decision. If you went wide receiver early and you need a running back, even if you went 0 RB, you could start with Connor. You could start with Chuba. They have very safe floors. They have a little bit of upside. So I think that they're good in this range. If you waited, maybe you took 2 wide receivers and you went tight end or quarterback early and you need that running back, I think they're safe there. Or the other way around, as we were saying, if you went running back, and this is one of your 3rd running backs, I think that's safe. I think Kamara could be a safe too. He's not going to be the flashy upside guy that we saw early in his career. But, let me ask you a question. Were the Saints good last year?
No. They weren't.
Did they have good quarterback play?
No, they did not.
and he still finished in half PPR as running back 12. So he was an RB1 last year. So and it wasn't like that was a touchdown outlier season. He had 3 total touchdowns on the year. So even in a terrible offense, he still produced just because of how often he's on the field, how much he's used, and how many passes he catches. So I do think that in this range, if you are starving for a running back, he does make a lot of sense. And then the other guys obviously have a little bit more upside.
Yeah. And Kellen Moore, love him or hate him, he designs an offense around, he's not one of these guys who comes in and says, I'm going to put my offense in, and he has changed his offense to tailor to his the players. He's done that time and time again. And so, again, I see the appeal. If you've built your team and you're looking for somebody as a running back too, or again to pop in there, and you're right. No one's going to go, oh man, great pick. That's okay, right? I don't need the rest of the league to go, oh man, great pick. I need my running back too to average 18 points a fantasy game. I'll take that.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So if we dive into tier 6 here, now this is where it starts getting a little sketchy. You know, we obviously made a case about Henderson here. I think he belongs here. Some other people, based on this preseason, might move him up a little bit. But again, it is preseason, and I do think there's upside. You know, we talked enough about Henderson. I think Montgomery deserves to be here. I don't see him going away in the offense. Obviously, there's concerns with the change in offensive coordinator, but I still think he deserves to be here. I think the touchdown upside is still going to be there for him, and he's a guy that gets used in the red zone. And obviously, last year wasn't exactly healthy, but if he plays the full season, and this is a better defense, and like I said, they're playing from ahead, I could see him still getting plenty of touchdown opportunities here. Aaron Jones, I think with JJ McCarthy, obviously they're going to want to rely on Justin Jefferson being one of the best wide receivers in football, but I think Aaron Jones is going to be utilized quite often and could actually be a safety blanket for JJ. We know that this is a very good coach team, and they're going to want to put McCarthy in opportunities to succeed. Why wouldn't you try and get the ball in Aaron Jones's hands in space? So I think from a receiving standpoint, he definitely has some upside. I still think that he has some rushing upside as well, but I definitely think he's going to be utilized heavily in the passing game. DeAndre Swift, I mean, nobody wants to believe in this guy, but the Bears obviously do. Ben Johnson obviously does. They didn't bring anybody else in. They drafted Monangai. Roshan is hurt. I mean, again, this is a team similar to what we said with Hampton. Maybe they bring in a veteran presence. Maybe they trade for Brian Robinson, and that hurts things. But as it stands right now, where you can get Swift, I absolutely love the workload that he's going to have in what should be a better offense. So I love him here. And then Pollard, not crazy about him, not crazy about this offense, but showed that he stepped right back into the right direction last year after an injury in Dallas and just a rough season. So I think that he's going to have a healthy role there in what should be a better offense. And then the fact that the Tajay Spears injury there should give him some more workload. I think he deserves to be here. Now, we're at the point now where obviously you can make cases for or against a lot of these guys. You could bring some people up here, move some people down. So, Mike, what do you think in this range? And, you know, I guess from here we can just go into basically, I mean, anybody at this point.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being honest, the way I'm building my team, I'm trying to avoid this tier, only because every one of these guys has, other than Jones, I think you are spot on Aaron Jones. I think that Minnesota is a well-coached team. I think the offense is better, even with J.J. McCarthy and some of the question marks there at quarterback. I think it's a better offense than people are giving it credit for in total. I think that they're going to put Jones in position. I do believe that Jones is, his days of getting, 300 carries or 250 carries, I don't know. I think he's going to probably live closer to 200 to 225. I think that's probably where they want to cap him. I think they've got Jordan Mason there for a reason. But I do believe he can be effective with those carries, and I believe he can catch 50 balls still. So I think he's going to be involved in that offense, and I think the offense is going to be pretty good. I really do. I think they're going to be in a lot of games where they're going to need to score some points. It's a tough division, and I think it's going to be a lot of tough games, and I think there's going to be some good offenses in that division this year. So, I like Aaron Jones the most in this tier. Montgomery is again, not flashy, but a guy who could easily pick up 10 to 12 touchdowns, 13 touchdowns, and where you're getting them, there's just, I don't see too many players with that kind of valuation. Pollard, the question for me with Pollard simply falls on, what is Cam Ward? Is Cam Ward going to be an effective quarterback, or because Pollard is not traditionally your powerhouse 320 carry guy, right? Pollard's best where he's running to the outside, where you can get him into space, and he plays in that type of offense. A lot of people are saying, and reports coming out of camp that Cam Ward is walking a walk, that he's doing all the right things, he's progressing correctly, he's making the right reads. If that's the case, offense, you've got an alpha there with Calvin Ridley. He's an older guy, I understand, but you got an alpha. Lockett's there now, nothing to write home about. I'm not going to go, oh man, they got Tyler Lockett, but they got a guy who can play the slot there.
Solid veteran presence. That's huge for a rookie.
Absolutely. And so now, you add in a guy like, Pollard and you're kind of off to the races there. And so if the offense can kind of find its groove early, Pollard's a guy who's, I think, going to contribute. The biggest question mark with Pollard, and I know, we tried to avoid playing to the touchdown game because you're going to get burned there. But ultimately, he has struggled to find the end zone the last couple of seasons. And that's, really the mark of why he is not in the tiers above. So, of those guys, I mean, again, I like Jones, and I like Jones the best without question. Swift, I don't know. He just is not a guy who excites me. And I'm a Bears fan, and he's just, I was, just mortified that they didn't go out and get anybody to at least bring in. And so I don't know what they're going to do. I've heard that before he got injured, Roschon was impressing some guys, impressing this new coaching staff. But then I just read a report where they said he might be a surprise cut, which if they cut Roschon, who else is back there? I mean, they've got a 7th round rookie from Rutgers. Who else is back there to fight with Swift for touches? And if that's the case, we just said it earlier. In football, touches and the opportunity to get the ball is key. In fantasy football, that's king, and if the guy's going to touch the ball 300 times between passes and, catching passes and rushes, you gotta move up the list, but again, it's just a matter of understanding, I'm taking a wait and see approach on Swift because he doesn't excite me. There's just nothing about him that I'd say, oh man, I like him. He's kind of lumped into this. I mean, to these guys, you lumped him in perfectly. It's a great tier.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is the opportunity that he gets where you're getting him, where you get to draft him. It's not Swift the player. It's Swift in this offense with this improved offensive line with Ben Johnson. It's kind of more that, and the fact that Ben Johnson basically gave Swift his best season of his career to this point too.
Right. Yes, I agree. You're absolutely right that there is something to be said about that. And again, if you're talking about opportunities, right, and that's what we said, where you're getting DeAndre Swift, it's a hell of a value. I mean, it really is. You asked if there's anyone else I would bring up. Really, the only other guy that I look at who I think is kind of in this tier is Isaiah Pacheco, because I think the Chiefs' offense is going to be improved. And while I understand that they have Kareem Hunt and they brought in Elijah Mitchell, and it could get ugly there. Andy Reid light. I mean, he used Pacheco. Pacheco was his guy before he got injured last year, and so I'm a guy who thinks where you're getting Pacheco, you could do a lot worse. And so for me, he's the one guy that isn't in this tier, but I would probably throw him into this mix. Again, I'm not shooting for the moon with Pacheco. I'm not saying, oh man, he's running back 1, but I'm saying, he in this range, I would throw his name in there.
Yeah, and I mean, once we get further down here, that's basically what you're doing is you're taking your shot on these guys, and right. Whether it be opportunity or upside. The only thing that worries me with Pacheco is he looked so bad at the end of last season, and it's just a question of was it the injury or was that really him? I mean, was he a product of this offense when we saw him succeed prior to the injury, or is he that good? There's just a couple too many questions for me. But as you said, where you're getting him, I think it's definitely a value of potentially in the running back one in what should be probably a top 10 at least offense.
Yeah, I that to me is the thing. There is that I think he's, I'm attributing it to the injury. I think that what we saw in 2023 was more in line with what Pacheco should be. But I understand the concerns. I think that because of those concerns, you might be getting a value there. That again, and like I said, I'm not moving them into tier 3. That's not what I'm doing. But in this range, when you're starting to look at guys, I tend to lean more towards a guy like him, just because I kind of believe in him a little bit more than the rest of the guys.
It's understandable. Yeah, and then you touched on Jordan Mason. He's a guy I love getting late. I think they got him for a reason. I'm high on Aaron Jones, but I do think that Mason Jones struggled a little bit when they got in close last year. And I think Mason later in drafts, he could be a guy that could basically fill in as your RB2 or potentially a flex at times. I think he has a little bit of touchdown upside, so I do like him. And then as we get further down here, you're basically, as I said, taking your shot on guys that potentially have upside or opportunity. RJ Harvey, I think, could be a good player. I mean, Dobbins at the same time. We know Sean Payton likes to use multiple backs, so I could see him potentially having a pretty good role. I'm concerned. Earlier in the year, I liked Caleb Johnson quite a bit, but the fact that they're saying Gainwell's playing over him and Jaylen Warren, the fact that you have Aaron Rodgers there, tends to not like rookies, especially if they're not in the right place. That concerns me a little, but I think he would be a guy to keep an eye on late and maybe even potentially if he goes undrafted, which is unlikely, maybe pick him up on the waiver wire later. Or that's another thing. Maybe somebody does draft him and they're just like, this guy sucks. They're not even using him. He might be a guy to keep an eye on the waiver wire later on. We talked about Charbonnet potentially getting mixed in here. I think that he could make some sense. Late, I like Ramondre Stevenson. There's some stink around his name. He's still going to be used in this offense that we think is going to take a step forward. What do you think down here, Mike, in some of the later rounds, some of these nasty guys?
Yeah, when you start getting into, we're moving out of the top 25 running backs, let's say, and we're going to get into the kind of the later round picks. The guy I like is Jaylen Warren. He's been overlooked, I think, and I know I'm guilty of this early in the year. I saw Caleb Johnson and I saw the skill set and the offense, and I thought it melded perfectly. And then, I started watching him, and he struggles with the pass protection. And I understand that they may not have used him a lot in that, but if you can't run a guy out there who's not going to protect with Aaron Rodgers back there, because Aaron Rodgers isn't running anymore. That's the one thing we saw last year. That elusiveness has escaped Rodgers. And so you need someone back there who can pass protect. Caleb Johnson has struggled with that. And they've talked about it all through camp. That has started to cool me on Caleb Johnson. And I'm looking at a guy like Jaylen Warren, who has caught the ball out of the backfield, who can pass protect, who is not the greatest in between the tackles runner, but can get some of that done for you. And he's just so underdrafted. I mean, you're getting him way late, right? And there's a guy, and that to me is a guy that I've kind of started to look at much later in the draft. I mean, I'm getting him in the 12th, 13th round. I mean, at that level, there's no harm. Even if he does nothing, I'm going to drop him and pick somebody else up, and because he's so far down on my list. But the other guy that I look at that again, I like the skill set, and I've heard some good things about him is Javonte Williams with Dallas. None of the Dallas. Hey, look, I know you got to hold your nose and do it, but.
He is supposedly the one there. Right. So, I mean,
who's going to run the ball?
This late.
Right. You're getting him so late, people are going, you're getting him so late. What's the harm? Right. I mean, he's the one. Jaden Blue, I get that Jaden Blue's going ahead of Javonte. And from everything I can see, Javonte Williams is the one there.
Yeah.
So again, I like, I like him. I shouldn't say I like him. I found myself getting him as a running back 4 and 5, right, for depth, and if it doesn't work out, you cut him and move on. But yeah, I mean, those are the guys. And then honestly, because of the HN injury, Jalen Wright is a guy that I've started looking at very late in drafts just to pick up. Honestly, more for just the start of the season. If you have HN, I've found myself kind of moving right up the board to making sure that I've got that handcuff, because I'm not a big Ollie Gordon guy. I don't see it. I don't understand the play there. I get the explosive nature of what he does, but I just think Jalen Wright is the natural progression there, and has shown it to me. So
The only thing with Jalen Wright, I have him in Dynasty. I liked him coming out. I thought he could be a fit. I thought he could be a Mostert replacement in this offense. I actually thought he could slot right into that role. The vision doesn't seem to be there. It's just he looks lost a lot of times, and that offensive line is so bad that
yeah,
I just, as we're getting closer to the season here, I don't think I'm going to have any Dolphins. I mean, I don't think Tyreek Hill is washed, but I don't think he can be Tyreek Hill in this offense. I don't even think Tua is going to have enough time to throw him the ball. It's
amazing.
scary.
It's amazing to me how bad this team has gotten on offense in a rapid nature. I mean, 2 years ago they were a dynamic offense, and forget the wheels falling off. Everything fell. I mean, they've got no car left. I don't understand what happened there. But I'm with you. I mean, again, I understand the concern. I like the skill set a little bit more, and I understand the concern with the vision. And yes, he does need time. He's a guy who has to see the hole to hit the hole, right? He's not a guy who's running to a place and the hole's going to be there kind of thing, and so I understand the concern, but again, you're getting him so late. There's just, to me, there's no risk, and the reward is he could be a starting running back for you, at least in a spot start situation early in the year. I do believe I'm a little higher on HN than you are, and I'm a little higher on Wright than you are, Ed, but I understand the concern.
Yeah, and I mean, we get further down here. We said one of the reasons we're lower on Breece Hall is he's not going to get the touches. Nobody wants Braylon Allen. Nobody. You can get him very, very late in drafts, and if they're going to be using him enough to where one of the most talented running backs in football is not being drafted, maybe you might want to keep an eye on that guy.
I'll tell you what, it's a great point. There are 3 guys that I highlighted on my list. They're way low. You're getting them in the 12th and beyond rounds. So again, much later in the draft. But it's Braylon Allen, it's Trey Benson, and it's Tyler Algier. And those 3 guys, I believe, I mean, as high, I'm high on Connor, but I think Trey Benson has a role in the offense, even if Connor's healthy. I think he's going to have a role. And if Connor misses time, he slots in as an easy starter as a running back 2 at worst. And if the offense really is as good as I think it could be, he could be a low end running back 1 on a particular week. And so to me, I agree with you. Braylon Allen is criminally underdrafted for a guy who, I mean, they're calling him the 1B or the 1A, 1B, or whatever Aaron Glenn's calling it this week. I'm with you. And you're getting them so late. And those 3 guys, they could be, hey, in a deep league, those are flex starts, right? Those could be guys who you might have to pop in there, and they have a role, and you're getting them so late. I really like it. I like it. Those are the 3 guys that I kind of highlighted on my list as like way, way back end.
Yeah. And that's important to note too, is too many people think about handcuffs of, oh, I have Connor, I have to get Trey Benson. That's fine if you want to do that, but just because you don't have Connor doesn't mean you don't need to go get Benson. Just because you don't have Breece Hall, you can still get Braylon Allen. Just because you don't have Bijan, you can still go get Algier, because that's what you should be doing later in drafts, is not, oh, I have my tight end has a week 10 bye week. I'm going to pick up this tight end to play him in week 10. It's 10 weeks. That guy's just going to sit on your bench for 10 weeks. Take one of these high upside guys where if something happens, everybody is going to the waiver wire to try and pick him up. You already have him stashed on your team.
That's absolutely correct. It drives me nuts when people go, well, I got to get a backup for to your point, my tight end, or I got to get a second defense, or I got my kicker's got an early bye week. I got to pick a second kicker. Stop. Don't do it. What are you doing? You're nuts. You're losing out on a guy. I mean, if you pick a Cam Little as your second kicker and you don't pick Braylon Allen and he ends up getting 15 touches a week, you're going to be kicking yourself in the ass. I don't care what the hell it doesn't matter, and those are the things that you got to look at. I mean, and understand what you're trying to do, right? To your point, it's not about having handcuffs. It's about the potential of this player being able to contribute with or without the fact that an injury may occur to Bijan or to James Conner or to Breeze, or even to James Cook. I mean, again, we don't know, but Ray Davis had a role last year. He had it, and could he have that role? So again, there are some guys down there that, Tyler Algier is a perfect candidate. Every week he was getting 10 touches he was getting double-digit touches, whether in the past, get 8 rushes and 2 receptions or what have you. He has a role. Those are important players that you can get basically for free. So I'm with you. Like I said, those are guys. The other guy, we didn't touch on him, but Isaac Rendo, he is, he proved he had a little bit of juice last year. He had a couple games there, before he got hurt. He had a couple games there where he had some juice. He's another guy you're getting way late. And if McCaffrey stumbles, if something happens, I think, he can step into the role and really have some upside. I mean, again, he's definitely running back 2 every week. He's at worst a running back 2, I think, just because he's going to get the bulk of the touches in that offense.
Yeah. And then I think Eckler's someone you could target late, obviously not flashy, doesn't have the upside of what these other guys are talking about, but in a good offense should pretty much be the 1A there. So I think you can go there. And then just got to bring him up. He's not on my board at all. I'm not going anywhere near him. But Joe Mixon, it's very concerning. I mean, you have no idea. He could miss 3 weeks. He could miss the rest of the season. He could be fine. No idea. But for me, it's just we're getting to the point where it was hypothetical, taking him in the 5th round of a best ball or 6th round of a best ball if he falls there. Now, when you actually are drafting your team, it's a little too concerning for me, so I'm probably out on Mixon.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just can't. I can't do it just because it's the same reason I'm not drafting. I'm not drafting Najee. For the same right. He might come back in week 2 and be fine and carve out a goal line role, and there might be some upside. But I don't know that, and we're getting to a point now with Mixon, kind of the same way. I'm just not in. And honestly, the other reason is because I just think that backfield, I mean, they got Chubb, and I know Chubb's old and he's uninspiring from a fantasy perspective. But there's just too many red flags for me, both on the health concern and what's going to happen there. So I'm out. I'm out on Mixon. He's just not a guy I can target.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Tiger Woods just fell asleep. He's exhausted. So I guess that means it's time to get out of here. We've exhausted the running back position, but I think we did a good job of basically encapsulating anywhere you want to go at the running back position during your draft. So, Mike, appreciate you joining. This was definitely fun, but head over to the Mad Lab MMA because we are in there all the time. And it's not just football. It's not just MMA. Mike absolutely destroys the Kentucky Derby and soccer and darts. And we have a good time over there. So, Mike, thanks for joining.
Thanks, Derek. Talk to you soon, buddy.
All right, man. So that's going to do it for this week. Thank you, everyone, for listening, watching. If you haven't caught it yet, go back. We did the wide receivers. We did the quarterbacks and tight ends. We'll do some season preview stuff coming up, some betting stuff, maybe some educational stuff on DFS and betting as well. So keep an eye out. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Hit that like button. Seriously, it goes a long way this time of year getting new listeners, new watchers. So if you're on Spotify, Apple, leave a review. Greatly, greatly appreciated. But I'm your host, Derek Helm. And remember,
Just have fun out there.